You're wearing one of my favorite, if not my favorite sweatshirt of yours right now.
Mr. Solzhenitsyn.
The line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being. Man.
I think that's partly paraphrased too, where he said like, you know, the line between good and evil does not go down political lines or country lines, or there might even be one or two other things, but through the heart of the individual.
That was part of what Lex Friedman and Ben Shapiro spoke about in that podcast you sent me.
Oh, interesting. Did you watch? I hadn't even started it.
No, I haven't watched the whole thing, but they one of the things that Ben Shapiro touched on, which I think is such an important discussion, he said that people have this idea that if they were alive or lived in an area during a time of serious oppression, that like they would have been the person to stand up and speak out. And they also assume that people who have done really bad things, like people who we look at as like evil, are just like a completely different type of person. And they couldn't imagine that they would do that same type of thing. And it's like, that's just so far out of reality. Mm-hmm. When you're surrounded by that, and your livelihood depends and your survival depends on essentially conforming to what the societal norms are.
Yep.
Regardless of whether or not you think they're okay, 99.99999% chance you're doing the exact same shit that you look back on in history and can't believe people did.
Ordinary Men, right? Isn't that the name of that book?
Yeah, great book.
Yeah. It's easy to judge other times. I mean, that one's particularly outrageous, but if you take any example, it's easier to judge other times in history through the lens of today's standards and morality. And
well, that one as well, even like it's easy to judge. Like I could not imagine. That's why it's crazy. I think some of the greatest heroes of the Holocaust and World War II are the people who were not Jewish, but took Jews into their homes and hid them and tried to save. Like those are some of the greatest. Like they weren't Jewish. They had no reason to do it other than what they felt was deeply right, and put them and their entire families at risk, and often they were killed because of it. It's like those are like the ultimate heroes. Yeah. All they had to do was just conform and put on a face and do what everyone else was doing. Mm-hmm. And they deliberately went out of their way and risked their lives and lives of their entire family to try and save people who were innocent. And it's like, those were so few and far between, but those were like the ultimate. The people who were, joined the army or joined the stormtroopers, whatever it is, even if they didn't believe it, they were like, well, I've got to do it in order to stay alive and to keep my family alive. It's like, that's what the vast majority of people would have done, like by far.
And it almost takes a level of arrogance to think, oh, if I was there, I would have done this impossibly courageous thing and gone against everything, like chosen the right path rather than the safe one, even though it puts my life and my family's life at risk. Like,
yeah,
it makes it even more impressive.
You'll like this. In the Batman movie, The Joker, do you remember the scene when the Joker gets those two guys in the room and he's like, all right, I'm going to bring one of you on, but I only have room for one more. And this is when tryouts are. And then he like leaves them the sharpened stick. He's like, basically saying you're going to fight to the death. Uh-huh. But then they immediately cut the scene. So you don't actually see if they fought to the death or not. But it's like that type of situation where you're best friends with someone, potentially. You're best friends. You work together. It's like, okay, but only one of you can live right now. Mm-hmm. Do you fight to the death with that person? Or do you, like, what do you do? Right? It's these are the types of situations where why I love that quote on your sweatshirt, because it's not black and white. There's so much that goes into what we do and why. And when we're put in these difficult situations, you might make the choice that you're probably not going to be the most proud of.
Yeah, 100%.